You're listening to an African Elements top news story for April 9th, 2025. Please visit our website at africanelements.org for more daily news. Sheffield Police Wrongful Raid PTSD Lawsuit. Sheffield Police Lawsuit Highlights Trauma. By Darius Spearman, African Elements. Imagine being startled awake in your own home, not by an alarm, but by the terrifying sound of your door crashing inward. For Catherine Allen, this nightmare became reality on December 30th, 2024. Four Sheffield police officers, responding to a call about an intruder at the wrong address, forced their way into her home. They didn't announce themselves, they didn't have a warrant. Instead, they smashed through her door, aiming guns at Ms. Allen, who stood there in her pajamas, completely innocent and bewildered. The officers were searching for a non-existent intruder reported at address 106, not Ms. Allen's home at 406. Radio communications captured their confusion and eventual realization of the mistake. "We can't find an intruder at 106, an officer reported, only for dispatchers to correct them. It's 406. Despite this clear error acknowledged over their own radios, they only confirmed they were at the wrong residence after demanding and examining Ms. Allen's driver's license. Astonishingly, after terrorizing an innocent woman in her own home, the officers simply left. They offered no apology, no explanation, and certainly no arrangements to repair the door they had destroyed. Consequently, Ms. Allen was left alone to deal with the aftermath: a damaged home, mounting fear, and the financial burden of repairs. The physical damage to Catherine Allen's door was just the beginning. The emotional and psychological toll of having her home invaded by armed officers has been profound. Ms. Allen now suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, anxiety, and a persistent fear whenever she encounters police officers. The trauma necessitates medication just to cope with daily life. Her attorney, Bennett Pugh, highlights the deep emotional distress and humiliation caused by this unjustified invasion of her sanctuary. For Black individuals, encounters like these often tap into a deeper, collective trauma rooted in historical injustices, making the lack of apology or accountability even more painful. Seeking justice and compensation, Ms. Allen has filed a lawsuit against the Sheffield Police Department. The lawsuit outlines several legal claims: trespass for the unlawful entry, false imprisonment for the period she was held at gunpoint, and violations of her Fourth Amendment rights against unreasonable searches and seizures. It seeks financial compensation covering the cost of repairing her door, her ongoing medical expenses for PTSD treatment, emotional distress damages for the trauma she endured, and punitive damages intended to punish the officer's reckless conduct and deter future misconduct. Importantly, while Alabama state law caps damages in such cases at $300,000, the federal claims related to Fourth Amendment violations are not subject to this state cap, potentially allowing for a more just recovery. Filing in federal court thus becomes a crucial strategy. The Fourth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution is a cornerstone of American freedom, protecting citizens from governmental overreach. It clearly states that people have the right to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures. This generally means law enforcement needs a warrant based on probable cause and sworn testimony before they can legally enter your home or seize your property. Your home is considered the most protected space, where your expectation of privacy is highest. There are exceptions, like emergencies, exigent circumstances, or if someone consents to a search, but raiding the wrong house based on faulty information typically doesn't qualify. The standard set by the Supreme Court focuses on whether a person has a reasonable expectation of privacy that society recognizes. Clearly, being secure in your own home, especially in pajamas, falls squarely within this expectation. Furthermore, when evidence is obtained through an unconstitutional search, the exclusionary rule often prevents it from being used in court. Although initially applied only to federal cases, this protection now extends to state actions through the 14th Amendment. Therefore, the officer's actions against Ms. Allen appear to be a direct violation of these fundamental rights. Catherine Allen's terrifying experience isn't an isolated incident involving the Sheffield Police Department. Instead, it appears to be part of a disturbing pattern of alleged misconduct. The department is currently facing multiple lawsuits, painting a picture of potential systemic issues. This history raises serious questions about training, supervision, and accountability within the department. For instance, Marvin Long filed a federal lawsuit back in 2021. He alleged that Sheffield officers unlawfully arrested him and caused injuries by deploying a police dog. More recently, in 2024, Denoris Richardson sued the department, claiming excessive force was used against him. Adding to these concerns, Valerie Patterson filed a $3 million lawsuit in January 2025. Her suit alleges negligence after she suffered a severely lacerated leg from a collapsing jail cot and was subsequently denied adequate medical care. Cumulatively, these cases suggest recurring problems that go beyond individual officer errors. The cluster of lawsuits against the Sheffield PD points towards what legal experts might call systemic negligence. This isn't just about one bad apple, it suggests deeper institutional failings where patterns of misconduct become almost routine. Systemic negligence in policing can manifest as repeated violations of citizens' rights. Often, this involves officers relying too heavily on exceptions to the warrant rule or acting on poor information without sufficient verification, just as happened in Ms. Allen's case. Scholarly critiques point out how doctrines like good faith, where officers might be excused if they believe their actions were legal even if mistaken, can inadvertently shield departments from accountability and erode constitutional protections. This erosion doesn't happen in a vacuum. It creates real trauma for victims, like the PTSD Ms. Allen suffers, and clogs the legal system with cases challenging wrongful searches, faulty warrants, and excessive force. Significantly, these systemic failures often disproportionately harm marginalized communities, particularly Black communities, fostering deep distrust and perpetuating cycles of injustice. Addressing systemic negligence, consequently, requires more than just addressing individual incidents. It demands institutional reform. The issues highlighted by Catherine Allen's case aren't confined to Sheffield. Similar concerns about police conduct and accountability echo elsewhere in Alabama. In May 2024, Twyla Stallworth and her son, Jermari Marshall, filed a lawsuit against the Andalusia Police Department. Their suit stemmed from a neighbor dispute that escalated dramatically, resulting in allegations of false arrest and assault. Ms. Stallworth endured a humiliating strip search and was jailed for 15 hours before the situation was clarified. What sets the Andalusia case apart, however, is the official response. Andalusia's mayor publicly acknowledged that the arresting officer demonstrated legal incompetence in handling the situation. The city dropped the charges against Stallworth and Marshall and committed to improving officer training. While critics argue that apologies and promises of training aren't enough without concrete accountability for the officer, this response contrasts sharply with the silence and lack of apology Ms. Allen received from Sheffield officials after her home was wrongfully raided. Nevertheless, both incidents underscore the potential for devastating consequences when law enforcement fails to act properly. When citizens like Catherine Allen face violations of their constitutional rights, the legal path forward involves navigating state and federal court systems. A key aspect of Ms. Allen's case is the inclusion of federal claims under the Fourth Amendment alongside state claims like trespass and false imprisonment. This is strategically important because federal law, particularly concerning constitutional rights, often provides avenues for justice that might be limited under state law. False imprisonment, for instance, directly relates to the Fourth Amendment's protection against unreasonable seizures, being detained without lawful justification. One major difference lies in potential damage awards. Alabama, like many states, has tort reform laws that cap the amount of money plaintiffs can receive in certain civil lawsuits, setting the limit at $300,000. However, claims based on violations of federal constitutional rights, adjudicated in federal court, are typically not subject to these state-level caps. This allows victims of constitutional violations to potentially seek compensation that more fully reflects the harm suffered, including punitive damages meant to deter future misconduct. Federal courts are bound to uphold the Constitution, applying standards like probable cause and warrant requirements rigorously, offering a critical venue for accountability when state remedies might fall short. Copyright African Elements.